Hey pumpkins. I had a really rough night last night. It's about, oh, and Merlin knows that I'm sad. It's getting on 1 o'clock my time, PM, and I'm still kind of just waking up and dealing with the gravity of what happened last night. There are content warnings in this video. I may cry, first of all. I am human and I am allowed a wide range of human emotions, including grief and processing. So, that being said, there are also going to be content warnings about the passage of life, i.e. those being deceased. There are going to be content warnings about SA and domestic V. There are going to be content warnings about mental health and gaslighting, as well as obesity. The too long didn't read. I'm talking about my friend Brad, who passed away over the summer. Brad was never, ever inappropriate with me. He was a happily married man. He was a good influence on my life. However, one of his longtime friends was. Okay, so last night I had a bunch of dreams. The first one, which was the one that would make me cry, was actually the most positive one. I had a dream that my friend Brad and I were dressed up to go to some sort of, I think it was like an award ceremony, but like a Hollywood award ceremony kind of thing, and it was about best music stage performances of all time. And Brad was dressed in a tuxedo and I was wearing a fancy dress. By fancy dress, I mean like a dress that was fancy and not what people in the UK and Australia refer to as fancy dress, which is a costume party. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. Yeah, I'm going to ramble because I'm nervous talking about this because this is really the first time I've talked about this. So, Brad kind of looked like a penguin, and he was wearing like a tuxedo and actually had a bow tie on. And I think that this is probably what he would have worn when he walked me down the aisle. As I said, my dad's a good man, but we have some drama, we have some way of seeing things, so I had a backup plan for if I ever got married, Brad was going to walk me down the aisle. So anyway, he's wearing a tux. I'm not in a wedding dress, but I'm in a fancy dress. I can't remember what it looked like. And Brad and I are both fans of the musician Peter Gabriel. If you can say one thing about Brad, he was, you could even say he was a music snob, but he was a music connoisseur. And I mean, everybody's passionate about music, or everybody likes music. And I guess there's some people who have neurological issues and don't like music, but that's okay. Most people really, really like music, but Brad was really a music fan, especially when it came to 70s prog rock. Brad was a big fan of the band Genesis, especially Genesis in the early stages when it was fronted by Peter Gabriel. Music history, Peter Gabriel then retired from Genesis to do his own solo career, and Phil Collins took over and turned it into a soft rock band as opposed to a prog rock band. And that was part of the downfall of Genesis. Some blame Mike Rutherford, who then became Mike and the Mechanics, for it being kind of like a soft rock instead of prog rock. So Brad hates Peter Gabriel, Brad loves Peter Gabriel, Brad hates Phil Collins. And I'm not a Phil Collins fan either, so you're allowed to like Phil Collins if you're watching this. You're allowed to not like Peter Gabriel if you're watching this. If you're different than me, it is okay. But yeah, we're not fans of Phil Collins, but we are huge Peter Gabriel fans. And every summer, I didn't do it last summer with Merlin, but I had a dog before. I would put a sign on my window in the summer when I left my dog in the car that would say, please do not break my windows. The air conditioner is on, full blast. She has water. I'll be back in a few minutes. She's rocking out to Peter Gabriel because Phil Collins sucks. So that was the joke. So yes, if I left my dog in the car, the air conditioner was always running, and I had 2 sets of keys, so the car was locked with the dog in there. But yeah, anyway, Don't break my windows. The dog's fine. She's cool. She has water. I really love Peter Gabriel's music, and after Brad passed away, here's where I can feel the tears, I started playing the song I Grieve, which is a gorgeous song. It's a long song, but it's about the morning after or the day after, so when you love has passed away. So anyway, we're in this this beautiful theater, dressed like we're going to the opera, and Merlin's right here, and he's and as I've said before in the video about why I call you pumpkins, Brad and his wife Ellen had a dog named Merlin who passed away, and I thought that was the best dog name ever. So when I was looking at getting Merlin, before I picked him up and before I actually named him, I actually contacted Brad and Ellen and asked, is it okay if I name my dog after your beloved dog who passed away? And they thought it was a wonderful tribute to their Merlin. So my Merlin is named after his Merlin. So we didn't know that Peter Gabriel was going to take the stage. So it was a big surprise when Peter Gabriel took the stage, and he played the song and did a jaw-droppingly gorgeous performance of his song, Come Talk to Me. Okay, Merlin's gonna come up in my lap. He knows I have a sad. All right, come on up. Come on up, baby boy. You wanna come on up? Okay, he's just gonna sit there now. Oh, there we go. So, Come Talk to Me was a song that Peter Gabriel wrote when he had a falling out with his daughter and they didn't talk for a long time, so he put this song out that was like, I miss you, I love you, please come talk to me. And that made me feel like Brad is near me and he wants me to talk to him. Here we go with the tears. I'm allowed to cry. I miss my friend. With Brad in the afterlife, he now knows things. I believe that he's gained knowledge of things that happened that I never told him about, and I wish I had Kleenex here, and I don't, and gosh, what am I going to use? I'm going to use my dog. I got makeup on, it's going to run. So I met Brad when I was 18, the grand opening of his comic book shop, and I was there with my friend Miko. Miko and I grew apart. I miss him a lot. I know he lives out west now. And I met a much older gentleman at that point. He was about 10 years older than I was. And there were many ways that when I was 18 I was mature, but there were many ways that I wasn't. I got kicked out of my family home when I was 16, needed to move out on my own. So yeah, my last year of high school, I worked 4 jobs and went to school full time and still graduated. So I'm very proud of myself for that. I have kind of always dated nerds, and I think that I always will. I'm actually not a Star Wars fan. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I love Doctor Who. I actually made Brad a Doctor Who sweater, or a Doctor Who scarf for his birthday one year. He had asked me how much I would charge to make one. I'm like, well, you know, it's not cheap to make this. Like the yarn itself is like $100. So I think I quoted $250. And he's like, yeah, it's a bit out of my price range right now. Sales are slow right now. So I ended up just knitting him one for his birthday, and he loved it. There was one night in Brad's comic book shop where before Peter Gabriel was coming to Toronto, and that's the closest major city, and neither of us could afford at the time to buy tickets to see Peter Gabriel. They were like $250 for nosebleed tickets. So we ended up putting on after the shop closed, we put on a DVD of a former performance, and had some wine. We got some pad thai from a place across the street, and we had a great time hanging out and watching this Peter Gabriel performance where he did play Come Talk to Me. So I believe that Brad is open to me talking to him about what happened. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. So I've always dated geeks. I know I'm rambling here. I'm upset. I've always talked to geeks. I've always dated geeks. I don't think that. I mean, the guy I dated last year when I was involved in the DV relationship, he wasn't a geek, and it was really hard for me to relate to him about the stuff I liked and how passionate I was about it. I don't think that he ever would have gone to a convention with me. I think he would have thought it was below him. And it's the first time that I've ever dated someone who wasn't like into geek culture and cosplay and LARP and all that fun stuff that I love. Before I left the city that I was in last, where the comic book shop is, like pretty well every one of my boyfriends was at one time a customer of Brad's. And I remember one time I was talking with a guy online, and we started talking about meeting, and that ended up falling through, and I actually never met him. But it turns out he knew Brad, and we're talking, and I walk into the store one day, and he's like, "Caroline, quit dating my customers!" But it was all in good fun. There's a bit of a fetish category often within geek culture of busty redheaded women, and I fall into that category. So if I wanted to ever, pick up for me to go to a sci-fi convention, it's like shooting sedated fish in a barrel. The last guy I dated briefly, Jody, as I talked about him, awesome guy. He wants kids. I don't. We're still friends. We were talking about on our first date the origin of our names, and Jody is a gender neutral name, but is more commonly known as a woman's name, and he quoted Jane from Firefly and how Jane's a boy's name, Jane's got boy parts, and it was hilarious. But yeah, so I like nerds. Opening of Brad's store, there was a longtime friend of his there who was about 10 years older than I am. As I said, I was mature in some ways, but there were other ways that I wasn't. With having the lack of relationship with my parents, I turned to the church for comfort. And I was incredibly naive and immature when it came to matters of dating and sexuality. So yes, I had an 18th birthday earlier that year. So yes, I was legally an adult. And yes, I was living on my own and paying my own rent and working and being an adult. But at the same point, I was probably maturity-wise like 12 or 13 when it came to relationships and dating. And here I am with this much older man who I trusted, and there was never the actual act of RAPE, but there were things that happened that he did that were not consensual, but I didn't know what to do. I just became... I didn't know that I could say no. I didn't know, like I was just in shock while it was happening, and I became kind of a rag doll and just let him do things. Not Brad, this is his friend. As I said, Brad was never, ever, ever inappropriate with me. This is his longtime friend. I had made plans to move out west. I was going to take my last year of high school in another province and start my life out there. And then a few weeks before I leave, I meet this guy who treats me like I'm special and gives me the attention that that I've never got before. In my hometown growing up, I grew up in a little small town that was near that city, and I was always horrifically bullied for being ugly. And so here's this older man who thinks I'm pretty, and I didn't know. And stuff happened that was not consensual. I did end up moving out west and started to make friends, and there was, even though I maintained this long-term relationship with this gentleman in Ontario, I had a friend in Alberta who really was sweet on me and was really a nice guy and was more age appropriate and was really respectful, and nothing ever happened because I had a boyfriend in Ontario. And one night I'm on the phone with this older gentleman back in Ontario, and he starts talking about marriage, and me being 18 and having probably the relationship maturity level of a 13-year-old, and having this exposure to this fundamentalist religion that said that this stuff isn't supposed to happen before marriage, I felt like marriage was what should happen. So I got on a plane. I moved back to Ontario. I ended up moving back into my parents' house, and within a short period of time, my parents kicked me out again, and I ended up working at the same jobs I was at again, and 2 weeks after I moved back for him, he broke up with me. Not knowing what to do, I called too much because I was in high school, and I pushed a lot and I chased a lot because I didn't know better because I was in high school. And he started to tell everyone how crazy I was and how nuts I was. It wasn't that I was crazy, it was that I was a high school kid, and perhaps if he wanted to date someone who had the maturity of an adult, that he should have been dating someone his own age. Just a thought. A few years after that, he spent time in a mental institution, but yet, I'm still the crazy one. Not to shame people who spend time in mental institutions. If you need that kind of help, then that's there, but don't continue to call me crazy when you are the one who is at fault. 20 years later, if my name comes up in any conversation, he will still go on and on about how crazy I am. Perhaps out of his own sense of guilt for what he did to me, I don't know. He has, in an ironic twist, decided to become a religious fundamentalist, and is incredibly judgmental of anyone who isn't a part of that religious fundamentalist movement. Which, yeah, I was just leaving at the time that I was meeting him and quite confused. So, because of the beer bug happening in the world, Brad's funeral and memorial has been put off until we can safely gather. So there hasn't been a formal goodbye yet. When that happens, this friend of his will no doubt be flying back to Ontario to pay his respects, as they were friends before I met him, and that was more than 20 years ago, so of course he'll be there. I am aware of another young woman who was 18, and at the time this guy would have been pushing 40, and similar stuff happened. So I know that this friend of my friend's has a thing for barely legal girls that don't have much experience in the real world. And I'm looking at this upcoming memorial that will eventually happen, and the fact that I need to be in a room with this man who took advantage of my innocence, and I'm going to be there with my 20-year-old daughter, who I had asked Brad to be her godfather. So of course she's going to be at that funeral. having this man who I know has a thing for barely legal girls with not a lot of experience in relationships or with men, and having my barely legal daughter in a room knowing that she's never had a boyfriend and that she doesn't have experience with that kind of thing, that scares me. And I mean, he talks about how crazy he thinks I am. You want to see me get crazy, go near my kid. And I think any parent, knowing the background of that, would understand. So I'm talking to the internet and not Brad, because I can't. Well, I can, but... And it's just time for me to come clean about this and how that shaped just about every relationship that I had for the next 20 years, because I had this this warped connection between sexuality and emotional connection, because I felt like because that stuff happened that I didn't necessarily consent to but didn't participate in, that that meant that there was supposed to be an emotional connection. I ended up having this really messed up connection between sexuality and love, and sexuality and emotion, that if that happened then I should feel love, and if something's wrong with me if I'm not feeling that. So I think the relationships that became sexual very early ended up becoming very very emotional too quickly, because I didn't have those boundaries in place. And so now, being 40, I'm able to see that much differently, but I still identify as demisexual, and demisexual is the sexual preference where someone cannot feel sexually attracted to someone unless there is an emotional bond. So this leads to me, I mean, I still have like celebrity crushes, but that doesn't mean necessarily that I want to do anything with them. It means that I in the past felt like I had to become sexual very early, and that I had to give in to the pressures because that was normal, and that ended up with me having really unhealthy emotional attachments to men when it was inappropriate. And I learned my lesson to not chase men, so it left me in this just hole and this lurch, and being far more hurt than I should have by situations that should have been casual. So now I've learned that I need to delay sexuality until there is a time for an emotionally healthy connection. And in being 40 and dating, it's kind of assumed that you start becoming sexual at a point in time of, there's like the third date or the fourth date, and then you start doing the weird stuff on the fifth and sixth date. And there was something I really appreciated about my relationship with Jody, is I told him that I just left that a physically, sexually, and emotionally abusive relationship the year before, and so he's like, I'm gonna let you call the shots on this. And so for me to be the one to make the first move, and obviously he was ready to go when I said go, but that level of respect of, I know that this is traumatic for you, so I'm gonna let you make the first move. And I had never made the first move before. I didn't know how to make the first move, and that was really awkward, but a really good growth experience. So I'm gonna send this to Jody after, because we're buds, and I care about him and I want the best for him. And if tomorrow he said, yeah, I met a great girl, I would be so happy for him, as long as she treats him well. And if she's bad to my friend, I will there might be a jar. So that is me coming clean about an incident that I never told Brad about, and I don't know if Brad would have continued to be friends with him after I told him that. I'm gonna post this on Facebook, and I'm gonna tag Brad because his wife still has access to the account, just because, I still, I'll post on Brad's wall sometimes of, I saw this and I thought of you, or I heard this song and I thought of you. I don't know if he's checking his Facebook from the Great Pumpkin Patch. But so his the comic book shop is still being run by two of his friends in his memory. And I think I'm going to ask them, we're in lockdown right now, so the shop isn't open, but I think I'm going to ask if I can put a bit of like a shrine to Brad and his memory in the basement of the shop, so that people can come and talk to him. A place to remember him, since there hasn't been a memorial or a funeral yet. So I am going to link in the notes the song "Come Talk to Me," and yeah, thank you for listening. I'm sure that if the older guy who's friends with Brad sees this, there's going to be all this, Caroline's crazy, Caroline's nuts, whatever. And the only reason I would get nuts about this is if you come near my kid, so stay away from my kid. I'm serious. Anyway, yeah, I'm feeling really raw right now. There's a lot of emotion going on today, and I stood up a client today, and I didn't realize, because I'd woke up and I was groggy and upset, and she's one of my regulars, so I'm gonna email her and kind of let her know what happened. And and I'm hoping that she'll be good with rescheduling. She's a lovely lady, so there's that. Yeah. Have a great day, pumpkins. Stay safe. And yeah, hug those you love, okay? Alright, bye, pumpkins.